Questions. You may have questions you've been wanting to know about show business or movies or Plan 9, and we'll have time to answer some of those questions. Now, let me start just right from the bottom or the top. Let me take off my watch here so I won't run over time. Yeah, leave it right there so I can see it. Okay. I had always wanted to be an actor. I didn't tell anybody, except my parents. So one day I packed my suitcase, got my tennis racket out, and went to the Raleigh Road, Nash Street intersection in my hometown of Wilson, North Carolina, 40,000 population, and I had $40 in my, $100 in my pocket. That's all I had. But in those days, $100 was quite a amount. Anyway, I set out to hitchhike to Hollywood, California, to become a movie actor. Mind you, I did not know a single person out here, not one contact. So I left my hometown brimming with ambition to be in show business, be in motion pictures. Well, anyway, standing on the corner there, I put up my thumb and hitchhiked. And in those days, you must remember that it was right after World War II. People were still quite patriotic. And it was nice, patriotic, to give servicemen and college boys rides. So I stuck my thumb up and I got rides clear across America. 8 days it took me. I would get up I would stay at the YMCA, which is about $1.25. They give you a bunk, and I'd get up every morning, shower, shave, look as much like a college boy as I could, because I knew people trusted us. So I got on that highway about 8 o'clock every morning and began to hitchhike across America. 8 days later, I arrived in Hollywood with part of my $100 was already spent, so I had to get a job. I was staying again at the YMCA, and I began a series of menial jobs like working as a day laborer, shoe clerk in a shoe store, of course, and I worked as a waiter in so many restaurants, and I even tried to sing solos at weddings and funerals. But I didn't do too well. The funerals always made me very sad. Anyway, right along that time, I joined went to a school that was received ex-servicemen on a GI Bill. And the school was very good. It was a nice school. It was not a college. It was just a good school. I learned a lot from that school. The instructors, many of them were professional actors, and it was a good experience for me, and I learned a lot. However, I want you to hear what I'm going to say. If you don't remember anything else I've said today, please remember this. Don't do as I did. Stay here. Don't go traipsing off to New York or Hollywood to try to make it in films. Stay here in your college, or go to a college that offers theatrical or movie courses. So listen to what I'm saying. Don't forget it, because it's very important. Don't go to Hollywood to try to make it. Stay here. Get your rounded education. Actor needs to have a rounded education. Needs to know something about philosophy and art and music and poetry and math. Needs to know about he needs a rounded education. So please listen to what I have suggested. It's important. My first professional job as an actor was playing a leading man in an old-time spoofing melodrama. You know the kind where you hiss at the villain. I was a young leading man playing that role, and I got paid $10 a week. That was my first professional job, $10 a week. But I also had to help clean up the theater when the show was over. Anyway, one night an agent came to the theater to see the show. He saw me doing my antics and he was kind of amused. So he came backstage after the show and introduced himself, told me he was an agent. He wanted to represent me because there was a part of a Southern boy at 20th Century Fox that they wanted a Southern boy, a lanky Southern boy for. Oh, I was very delighted because nobody had ever wanted to help me or come to me or offer to help me. I was delighted. I said, sure, I'll let you represent me. So he took me out to Fox a couple of days later, introduced me to the casting director, and the casting director liked me. He thought I was nice, and he picked up on my Southern accent real fast. Now, if anybody ever had a Southern accent, it was me. Anyway, he took me upstairs to the director and the producer. He introduced me, and we talked for a while. They were quite amused with me, and I did a reading, and do you know something? They cast me in that part. My first interview I had ever had, and I was cast in the part. 7-week job, can you believe that? Well, I got the part, but I wasn't very good. In fact, I was lousy. I looked very amateurish. I just looked so bad in the film, and it was 5 years before Fox would even consider me for another role. In the meantime, I realized I was not very good as an actor, not convincing. So I began to take a series of acting classes. Rod Steiger was one of my teachers. He taught the method, and I learned a lot from Rod Steiger. And at the same time of taking these classes, learning more about my craft, getting more convinced about things I needed to know, at the same time I became very seriously interested and concerned about my body, my health. So I began to take care of my health. I quit smoking. I joined the gym. I started doing push-ups. I began to look good. In a year's time, I went from 170 to 205 pounds in a year's time. And I was looking muscular, and I looked good. I had a whole new image. And one day, my agent took me over to Warner Brothers. He was there to pick up a script. And I was just sitting there, and Sale Biano, who was the casting director, head casting director, came down the hall, and he looked at me, and he stopped. And he walked back to me. He said, who are you waiting for? I said, well, I'm just here with my agent. He said, who's your agent? I said, Wale Middleton. He looked at me, studied me like I was a side of beef. He said, Ronald Walsh is going to do a big film about the Marines. It's called Battle Cry, based on that big popular book. I said, oh, yes, I know that book well. He says, well, there's a part in there of a rangy Southern DI, and they're looking for somebody. And in a way, he wanted me to meet Ronald Walsh. Now, Ronald Walsh in those days was a very, very big and very important director, and I was thrilled to death. He said, come on upstairs, I introduce you to Ronald Walsh. And I walked into his office. There were several people in his office, and this old craggy old guy had on a patch, and he had a long cigarette holder, rough as he could be, and I admired him because he was a great director. Directed Earl Flynn, Humphrey Bogart, and I was thrilled enough to be in the same room with this great director. And he was kind of gruff but nice, and he said, hey kid, we're looking for a DI, a guy to play a tough, rough drill instructor. He says, can you be mean? I said, well, I'd like to try. He said, well, take the script, go out in the hall and read it and come back and read for us, would you? I said, okay, I'd be glad to, sir. So I went outside and studied the script a little bit, and I came back in, and I used Ronald Walsh and his people in the room with him as my recruits, my raw recruits. And I began to chew them out with this dialogue. I began to chew them out like they were worth nothing. I got right down into Ronald Walsh's face, and I told him how worthless he was. Anyway, he smiled, he laughed, he said, okay, kid, we'll give you a screen test. So, in a few days later, they called me to come over to the Warner Brothers studio. And there I did a screen test with people.